Grand Portage Resources recently completed the 2018 drill program on its 100% controlled Herbert Gold Discovery property located in the prolific Juneau Belt in southeast Alaska. Drill results are expected through late 2018. Past drill results included numerous multi-ounce gold assays on multiple veins. Grand Portage trading symbols are GPG on the TSX Venture, GPTRF on the OTCQB, and GPB on Frankfurt. For more information, please visit our website, grandportage.com.
You're listening to HowStreet.com radio, available online at TalkDigitalNetwork.com. Welcome to HowStreet.com radio, the online source for market opinions. Here is Jim Goddard.
My guest is Stewart Muir, Executive Director of the ResourceWorks Society. Welcome back to the show, Stewart.
Thank you, Jim.
Stewart, some exciting prospects for liquefied natural gas?
Well, that's right. LNG, as it's known, is a big story in not just BC, but Alberta too. Lots of interest in this. Of course, LNG Canada has got its $40 billion project going to be active in Kitimat by 2024. Today, some interesting news for BC Clean Energy. The Kitimat LNG plant that Chevron is proposing, which is a second one in that part of the world, will be using what they call e-drive, electric drive, rather than burning natural gas to run its plant operations. That's good news because of the need to do these things within the climate GHG gas emissions envelope that we've got. So the size of plant that they're asking for is almost as big as the LNG Canada one, which is truly humongous. So these are two big generators of jobs and revenue to government to pay for all those good things that citizens in Canada expect to have in their lives. And today, Rod Meyer, the CEO of Chevron Canada, was at the Haisla LNG conference to announce this news. So I think there was a lot of excitement in northwestern BC on that.
Now, of course, the environmental movement will say fossil fuels, LNG, that's horribly bad for the planet. Is it? And what's it going to replace?
Yeah, what it will replace is coal when used in electricity generation. And, it's true. We are hearing from a lot of people who believe that there is this kind of magic switch so we can just, overnight the, 7 billion people on Earth, we can just hit some switch and all of a sudden we will have no impact on the planet. That's obviously not how things work. We do need to have a plan. We need to seek the lowest impact in everything we do so that we can have a long, existence as a species on the planet. Everyone wants that. Who doesn't want that? But the problem is that it's not as simple to get there. There isn't this magic switch. And so LNG does represent a real benefit because it's reliable, it's affordable, it's relatively clean. It's not perfect, what is, and it gives us the ability to not only have it in our own country for our own use and our own industry's use, like the Chevron LNG, but also we send it to China, we send it to Japan and Korea and other places that in future are going to want our gas because they need it too. I mean, that's the big force. Our economy, our population in Canada, it's not really growing that much over time the way that Asia is. That's where the growth is, and that's where they need clean energy, and that's where LNG comes in. So when you hear someone say, "Oh, this is terrible, LNG, natural gas, fracking," they're really making it up. They're it's literally a fictional campaign. It's because I think people are trying to get the attention of the public. It seems like the only way to get people's attention is to scare the pants off them, and that's when you can teach them something. That's the theory. I think in practice it's really irresponsible to say these things about a way of reducing human impact on the climate. We have natural gas. It does have less CO2 in it. It does have less sulfur. It is a lower impact way to provide energy for people. Let's use it. That's the responsible thing to do. Anything else is not responsible. Over time, of course, we have innovation and new technologies we don't even foresee. That will make a difference. But for now, we have what we have. So it's pretty good news that BC can be part of that global transition story.
Well, every time I hear stories about being against liquefied natural gas, take a look at Westport trucks where they're converting diesel trucks into using natural gas for 90% of their energy. the smokestack that used to billow out black smoke is invisible.
Yeah, funny how that works. I mean, when one's younger, if you're 20 years old and you're an idealist and you want to change the world and it's not happening fast enough, most of us have been there. But as you learn the ways of the world, you realize that it takes a lot of work and effort in order to create outcomes, especially over this vast land area, vast populations we've got. You've got to work with the things that are accessible to us, and that's one of them. And indeed, you're right. I think there's things that on the face of it, that looks like it's harmful, but maybe it isn't, and the other way around. A great example actually is if you go to the oil sands in northern Alberta, especially go in winter when the air is very cold, you see all this smoke billowing from these smokestacks around Fort McMurray. It's white smoke. It's actually water vapor. There's no particulates in there, but it looks like hell from a distance, and it's actually utterly harmless. But I'm sure that there's organizations out there with photographs of that who are fundraising from, Europeans or Americans who don't know any better, to say, oh, look at the awful pollution coming from the oil sands. Well, often these images are not what they appear to be. And so you do have to go in, I think, and just be skeptical. You and I were journalists. We are naturally skeptical about everything and want to get to the bottom of it. I think the average person is skeptical, but maybe doesn't know how to get to the bottom of it. You've got to do a little bit of research if you're forming important opinions around these things that affect your life and decisions.
Governments like to put carbon taxes on carbon fuels, but what about the fact that Canada perhaps is the world's largest carbon sink? Should we not be getting a tax credit for $80 or $90 a year because our country soaks up all this carbon?
Yeah, and I think that it comes and goes. If there's a year where we have a lot of forest fires, it could be the other way around, where we're emitting more. And I think one thing we're going to need over time is better ways to measure all that. And, you have methods of doing that from space, different kinds of photography that you can pick up things. I think we're getting better at that. Over time, it's one of those areas where I think it can be, because we have a huge land area, an innovation driver for Canada. So suppose that we're reforesting an area that's been logged, and there are choices that can be made about, what kind of tree species should we have there? What would be the most efficient thing for future habitat for creatures? What should the best species be for greenhouse gas purposes? How much CO2 will that species lock up as it grows? Maybe you want a faster growing kind of tree that's going to absorb more carbon as it goes. And these are all considerations that, because we have a vast land area in Canada, we are better able than almost any other country in the world to be influential that way. And over time, I think that the land base of Canada will be one of our greatest climate assets, because we have the human power and ingenuity to be able to influence the way that it operates. Different crops in agriculture, implications there in soil management. So, I think the more we can be imaginative and exploring this stuff, the better we can be in finding all of the little contributors to being better on climate.
We'll have more with Stewart Muir right after this.
Hi, I'm Douglas Mason, President and CEO of Magnum Gold Corp, MGI, and the TSX Venture Exchange. A 2015 drill program on the LH property intersected several high-grade gold intersections, including 11 meters of 20.66 grams per ton gold. Additional drill targets on the LH property have been identified by a 2018 drone airborne magnetic survey to further evaluate a pyrrhotite-enriched gold-bearing system. Please visit our website at magnumgoldcorp.com.
MGX Minerals is revolutionizing the new energy economy with patented lithium extraction technology, replacing traditional solar evaporation using low-cost, low-energy nanofiltration. The first system of this paradigm shift technology is currently being commissioned. MGX Minerals trades on the CSE, symbol XMG, the OTCQB, symbol MGXMF, and Frankfurt, symbol 1MG. For more information, visit our website, mgxminerals.com.
Welcome back. We're speaking with Stewart Muir. Stewart, so-called secret report that's been leaked says Canada has been warming twice as fast as the rest of the world with climate change. And And that basically it's irreversible. There's nothing we can do about it. Plus, when you look at it statistically, we contribute 1% of the planet's greenhouse gases, and we live in the coldest country in the world. You combined all those things. What good are carbon taxes? Are they going to affect sunspots or volcanic eruptions?
Well, no carbon tax I know of will do those things. In terms of this report, I thought it was interesting. I mean, if you've got a globe around, or you can imagine one, the idea that one country, even the size of Canada, is this sort of, within its boundaries, is warming twice as fast as the U.S. or Russia or Greenland. It's a little baffling. I don't know if their data is correct or not, but it's sort of puzzling. Definitely something to look at. I wouldn't get too worried about it, though. I mean, the overall picture is of concern in terms of how you can take action that has an impact on it. The idea of a carbon tax, if it's an efficient one, is, I don't think, a bad idea if people become more environmentally responsible in the things they do. Whether the carbon tax we have now is the best way. I hear all these people talking about British Columbia, which has had a tax for 10 years now, as being this model of carbon pricing. And of course, on April 1st, the rest of Canada got its carbon tax, so people are more interested in the issue now.
Yes, and it has done nothing to actually influence how much gasoline is used, because people who have to drive to work still need to drive to work just like they did 10 years ago. People who have to drive a transport truck to haul food and manufacture goods to some place still have to haul them. There aren't alternatives to doing that. This tax has just been a tax grab, and they might as well just call it the tax grab tax rather than a carbon tax, because it's had no environmental input. It's not used for transit, if that's supposed to be the answer.
Yeah. It's funny that the federal environment minister is talking about how you're actually better off. You're getting more money in your pocket because of the carbon tax, which is puzzling, because that might apply for some income earners in certain provinces like Ontario, Saskatchewan, but it doesn't apply in BC because the carbon tax, except for a very small portion of wage earners who are at the lower end of earnings, is not coming back into your pocket the way it was in its first decade. The new government in Victoria decided they would rather keep that. The carbon tax will, as of I think the next fiscal year, or fiscal 2021, will generate I think it's $2 billion in revenues to government, which is as much as they get from some of the other big areas of taxation. So once that happens, how will any government ever give it up again? So I think we now have in BC the carbon tax basically structurally instituted into government revenues as a must part of that revenue mix. So there's no way it's ever going to change again. The rest of Canada, or parts of Canada where more of it is going to go back into consumers' pockets through different tax breaks, I guess that's well and good. But if you're in an area where you don't have an alternative, it doesn't really function the way it's meant to. If you're in downtown Toronto and you have streetcars or buses or subways or bicycles or cars, you can make choices. But if you're a rural resident going to your rural job from your rural home, you don't have that choice, and you have to use what's available, which is probably a car burning gasoline.
Well,
diesel.
Also, Stewart, the carbon tax is on heating fuels. And so what do? Again, we live in the coldest country on the planet. And even in the Vancouver area, sometimes you have to turn on the heat.
Yeah, well, the official answer to that, Jim, is, don't worry, just go get a heat pump and heat your home with electricity, which sounds good. It sounds green, doesn't it? No natural gas, use a heat pump. Well, I actually installed a heat pump in a home I owned a number of years ago, and I did it because I'd heard about how green it was, and I guess it was green in a way, but I'll tell you, it sure cost a lot of money to run. And, I think people are going to be choosing to heat their homes less, which I'm not sure that's what politicians have been selling them. They've been saying we're trying to protect the planet. They're not telling people, you'll be heating your home less because you can't afford it. If we electrify the whole economy, no one has even begun in government to tell us about what this means for getting that electricity. Where's it going to come from? I mean, they show you pictures of wind turbines, and they play, nice musical soundtracks with these advertisements, but it does nothing to address the fact that it has to come from somewhere. We have to build nuclear plants. We have to build big dams. Now, you look at Site C. Remember what a big controversy that was for years? Certain political parties didn't want to have it under any circumstances. It was going to destroy the landscape. It was going to be horrible. Well, we need to build about 2 of those every year between now and 2050 in Canada, just to meet the obligations that the politicians are telling us are absolutely necessary. But no one's actually doing the work to build those dams, nor is there really any river systems available where you could build them. So there's a massive disconnect right now between the energy aspirations of those who are making their political careers on this stuff and the reality of physics and geography in our land. So currently, it's really the consumer, the ordinary wage earner, who's going to be paying for that nice fantasy, which is rather unfortunate because we do need to do better with how we source and use energy. Definitely do.
So is Canada then essentially, after Site C, dammed out?
Well, in a sheer let's look at the rivers and on a map, you could put a dam here, there, and there. In BC, there's probably 36 river systems where you could, in theory, put a dam on, a big dam even, but that's not going to happen. I mean, look at the difficulties with Site C. That was decades in the planning. The full costs and political ramifications of that continue to be worked out and are very complex and costly. And I mean, certainly not saying we shouldn't do a dam like that. I think we need it, but don't underestimate how complex it is to make it happen. And imagine doing that, one more time, or 5 or 10 or 20 or 30 more times, which is what the numbers tell us we have to do. And part of the reason here is we're not talking about nuclear energy. People are talking about geothermal, which is still in the experimental stage. And to do it on a mass scale, we just, it's pure fantasy right now. Something that does work, nuclear, is something we're not allowed to talk about. You won't see the environment minister talking about it. You talk to people in Ottawa who follow this. They say she just refuses to talk about it. Well, it's the only practical thing that can replace the whole supply of coal and natural gas, if that's what we have to do. Now, I think to be practical, we actually have to get into carbon capture. Let's use that natural gas, but let's capture the carbon, because it's the carbon that's the problem, not the natural gas in its, just the fact we're getting energy from it. Getting energy from natural gas is a good thing to do. Getting the carbon not to escape into the atmosphere is actually possible to do. We just need to scale the technologies and make them cost effective to do that. And that work is actually happening in Canada more than almost any other place in the world. We are probably one of the world leading countries in carbon capture. And again, like nuclear, no one's talking about that here because I think the agenda has been taken over by the salespeople from Silicon Valley who want us all to have their solar panels and their wind turbines and those solutions. Those aren't practical, scalable solutions at all. They benefit some wealthy companies from the USA. They don't benefit Canadians. We need to look at things that we can do here to create jobs for people. And that's where basically the entire public policy conversation in Canada is completely off the rails.
We'll have more with Stewart Muir right after this.
MGX Minerals is revolutionizing the new energy economy with patented lithium extraction technology, replacing traditional solar evaporation using low-cost, low-energy nanofiltration. The first system of this paradigm shift technology is currently being commissioned. MGX Minerals trades on the CSE, symbol XMG, the OTCQB, symbol MGXMF, and Frankfurt, symbol 1MG. For more information, visit our website, mgxminerals.com.
I'm Kelly Jennings, CEO of PowerBand Solutions. PowerBand is a cloud-based provider of auction, inventory, and finance solutions that make buying, selling, and financing vehicles more efficient. PowerBand Solutions trades on the TSX Venture Exchange symbol PBX and on the OTCQB symbol PWWBF and on Frankfurt symbol 1ZV. For more information, please visit us at powerbandsolutions.com.
Welcome back. We're speaking with Stewart Muir. Stewart, some kind of bizarrely entitled study here or a commission, gender-based analysis of tax subsidies for fossil fuels. What the hell does that mean?
Well, I didn't even know that there was something called a federal environment commissioner, but they appointed a new sort of watchdog to poke around different areas of government. That watchdog came out with a report yesterday that, as you say, it's looking at this supposed evil of government, which is gender-based analysis of tax subsidies for fossil fuels. That they now want the Canada Revenue Agency to be looking at the tax breaks available to companies that develop natural resources through this gender-based analysis. Like, I have no idea what that is. And also at the same time, they talk about tax subsidies to fossil fuels. So right away, you know that this is part of that kind of left-wing academic movement to try to demonize the things we use in our everyday lives by casting them as some horrible thing that has to be stamped out. You know, what's happened under the Trudeau government is a lot of the intellectuals from that persuasion who have found nice jobs in government to push this idea that there's something evil about having a tax structure that allows various costs to be accounted for in different ways can be demonized as subsidies for fossil fuels. I guess the real idea, once again, it goes back to how does government give gifts to its friends in renewable energy. And again, you go back to these environmentalist groups in California who are paying a lot of money to create environmental noise and dissent in Canada, largely for the purpose of creating business opportunities for renewables. The fossil fuel witch hunt is part of that. The gender-based analysis of tax subsidies for fossil fuels is part of that too. And I think we'll be hearing more about it as these kind of thought police in government on our dime, by the way, are sent around to examine the activities of our civil servants and make their lives a living hell if they are thought to be somehow out of compliance with the gender-based aims of fossil fuel tax subsidies. It's quite something. I mean, it sounds surreal. It sounds like it's something out of Orwell, really, but it's actually happening right now on our dime. Can you believe it, Jim?
Well, I hate it, but the news,
yeah.
I can believe anything.
Hold
it. I'll use a different word. I won't use the word believe. I can imagine anything.
Yeah.
What I believe is totally different.
For those who are in mining who've been, celebrating whenever governments extend a flow-through write-off that's allowed mining exploration to occur, they're coming for you. That's one of the things they're targeting. And I think one of the great triumphs of the Canadian collaboration between government and industry has been innovation that allows exploration to occur because it creates ultimately GDP for the country, because the jobs in natural resources are up to 5 or 6 times more GDP productive than the average job in the economy. And that's what makes Canada such a great place to live. If you count having a great country as being one that can provide social services and defend the borders and all those things for the country. It comes from that base, because that revenue is what lets us import the things we need, whether it's MRI machines or blood products or vaccines, orange juice, iPhones, all that kind of thing. And so, when I hear about this sort of witch hunt in Ottawa on gender-based analysis of fossil fuel subsidies, what I'm hearing it as is there's someone who wants to end the Canadian way of life. They are not satisfied that we live as we do, and they're really inventing ways to try to make change that is not good for Canadians. And that's really what it's about. It's not gender-based. I mean, we all want to have a fair society where men, women, or whatever you want to call yourself have freedom to do what they want to do, and no impediments to those ambitions. But to construct these strange witch hunts is a very odd, I think, un-Canadian thing.
Does the federal government right now want to ban the shipment of oil along the BC coast?
Well, they do. They want more specifically, they're okay with Alaskan oil being shipped from Alaska to California or Washington State. What they're not okay with is Canadian oil being shipped from Canada to markets where it can fetch its best price. And the way they're doing that is their government in Ottawa is trying to pass a law for legislation buffs. It's called Bill C-48, and it's currently before the Senate. There's a Senate committee, the Transportation and Communications Committee, that's looking at the bill. They've been having hearings the last couple of weeks. You can see the hearings if you want to. You can read the transcripts. It's all on the Senate website. Interesting stuff, actually. But they're going out to BC. They're going to be in BC on, I don't know the exact dates. Could be the 17th or 18th of April. They'll be in Prince Rupert and Terrace, but somewhere in that week. And their purpose is to go and talk to people there because they just feel they haven't heard from enough people. And so what's being proposed is a ban for all time, or as long as the law lasts, on any larger tankers. So they're okay with, fuel barges to go from Prince Rupert to, a village, Bellacoola, or, places that need fuel for local use. What they're saying is they don't want to allow Alberta to send its dilbit or bitumen or crude oil to foreign markets where it will fetch a fair market price. That's known as market access. And not everyone is of the view that this is a good idea. They've been hearing from First Nations, for example, who are actually quite distressed that the opportunities they will have to get their First Nations out of poverty it will be closed off. So far, actually, in laying down the track for this bill, the Trudeau government has already cost the Canadian economy, by canceling the Gateway Pipeline, $270 billion. That's 30 years worth of the GDP boost that pipeline would have got. It was canceled by the new Trudeau government in 2016, even though it was approved. This bill is intended to make sure that no one can ever build a pipeline like that, or they build a pipeline with the expectation they could do anything with it at the coastal end. And we've heard from some creative thinkers, I think some good proposals, including from the Helpsuk First Nation, who are saying, look, what about having a coastal protectors program where Indigenous knowledge that the First Nations people have got on the coast can be used to add to coastal safety. Now, they're not really big on having tankers there, but it's a creative idea. It's in the right direction. There's also an idea for these special maritime zones that are in use in places like the Galapagos, the Great Barrier Reef in Australia, very special places, just like Haida Gwaii is a very special place, that allow there to be both economic use and tanker shipments and preserve the environment. There's 15 of these around the world. So we heard in the last few days about how that could be implemented here. It's a very creative idea. You create a corridor. You make sure all the equipment is in place. If there's a problem, you've got it all there. Now it's a great big space up there. You go up to, north of Haida Gwaii towards Alaska. That's some big waters, big sky, big mountains and fjords, big weather. It's all big. But the transportation minister is saying, no, it's impossible. We couldn't possibly do that. I don't think anyone believes him because he's really just pushing the Trudeau campaign promise from 2015, which is we're going to ban tankers on the Northwest Coast. There's no science. Even the scientists from the government of Canada, when you hear them speak, they're not saying anything that supports the idea of a ban. It sounds like they can solve any of these challenges. It's just the politicians who are, I guess, looking for votes in Vancouver from people who've been freaked out about tankers, which actually are incredibly safe around the world. And so that's what we're looking at. So it's Senate's job to, make advice on this, and they can rubber stamp it. They actually do have a way they could block it. I think they're feeling quite nervous about it because they see the implications. It's not just for BC; it's for all of Canada that an opportunity to send products to the world safely will be cut off. And I think a lot of Albertans are feeling left out of this conversation right now. But I guess there's not very many Liberal MPs from Alberta, so it may not matter in Ottawa.
Why would they ban Alberta oil on the West Coast when it's okay to have Arab oil on the East Coast?
I think largely because the investment by American foundations to create turbulence in our national discourse about natural resources has been focused on the West Coast. I think culturally it's a place where it's easier to bring these kind of all or nothing propositions into play and turn them into political dynamite. We've seen groups. There's one small First Nation, 1,600 people, that got $500,000 from just one foundation in California that is dedicated to trying to control our fate as a sovereign nation. And you see a lot of it. There's another group that got $2.5 million. Millions of dollars is coming into our political arena to allow the agendas of people who are not Canadians, who have no stake in our country, no interest in the well-being of people, to try to affect things. I think, rather than this bill or the Senate process, what I would like to see is a royal commission, because we have seen an abject failure by political classes at all levels of government to engage properly with the problems. I mean, citizens deserve to have an integrity-based, scientifically valid process for adjudicating the proposals that are part of our national sovereignty and our economic well-being. Right now, we're not getting that, and I think a royal commission approach would allow all the facts to be gotten onto the table. We can do it, in a proper way, and call all the experts that we need to hear from, so that we can get away from all these little battles every time there's a LNG plant or a mine being proposed. It turns into a little war, because in a significant degree, not the only factor, but a significant degree, we have this kind of taint of external money that it's got nothing to do with helping Canadians, but purely to do with foundations from the USA that are trying to become the ones driving the bus for Canada, and it really has to stop. So a royal commission is a way we can address this deficiency in our public life.
Well, Stewart, we've seen so many examples of how the last thing a politician wants is a real fact.
Yes, I think it's very selective, and the only way to do it is people power, and make sure that the power of our votes is understood. That's something that counts for a lot. And also, be skeptical. We're hearing a lot of things, about, just every day. Oh, fracking's terrible. Well, there's a foundation in San Francisco paying a lot of money so that people in Canada can be confused and fear can be brought into what should be our more calm, fact-based civic discussions about important issues. And, again, it's something that is just, I think it's growing. I think it's getting much worse. We're seeing it intrude into government. I mean, this whole gender-based analysis of fossil fuel taxes it's ridiculous. But it's because it's been viewed, I think, as a benign thing, that people making these decisions, oh, sure, go ahead and have your witch hunt into this, without really thinking through what it means or what intention is behind those who are advocating for it, and what the realities are of our resource needs, our ability to manage our impact on the land, water, and air, and how that is going to add up to Canada being a viable country in the world.
Stewart, thank you so much for chatting with us.
Thank you.
My guest has been Stewart Muir, Executive Director of the ResourceWorks Society. His website, resourceworks.com. His Twitter handle, @SJMuir. You're listening to HowStreet.com Radio. Find us on Twitter, @HowStreet. Our YouTube channel, Talk Digital Network. If you have any questions for the show or for our guests like Stewart, you can send them to info@HowStreet.com. I'm Jim Goddard. Thanks for listening.
Comments made on HowStreet.com Radio are an expression of opinion only and should not be construed in any matter whatsoever as recommendations to buy or sell any financial instrument at any time. Available online at TalkDigitalNetwork.com. HowStreet.com Radio is a production of HowStreet Media Incorporated.